Hey, thanks for joining me. I am Dan of DanH411 Guitar Lessons, and this is actually a second part of some tapping lessons that I'm doing that I wanted to go ahead and come back to this, revisit this, and show you a little bit more, because in the last one we did 3 notes. Today we're going to look at 4 notes per string, and it's going to sound more like this. A little bit more melodic because we're going to be using the diatonic scale instead of the pentatonic scale. And by doing that, we're going to go ahead and add in some extra notes. Now, if you watch previous lessons, you know that when we play on a diatonic scale, a 1, 2, 4, 1, 3, 4 pattern, and I'm talking about my first finger, my second finger, my pinky, my 1, 2, 4, and then the next shape is a 1, 3, 4 pattern, my first finger, my ring finger, my pinky. In this case, I'm playing on the second string at 5, 6, 8, and on the first string at 5, 7, 8. So 1, 2, 4, 1, 3, 4. When I play that, and I leave those 2 middle notes out, so what I'm playing with my middle finger and what I'm playing with my ring finger, I leave those out, I get a pentatonic shape. So in the last lesson, we did the pentatonic shape. This lesson, we're going to add those 2 notes back in, and we're going to get the diatonic shape. I think that's kind of cool that we can leave notes out, then add them back in, and we get a different sound, but we're not really changing much how we play. It's just adding a couple notes back in. So if you're following my lessons every week, then you're probably up to speed on this and you can understand exactly what I'm doing there. If not, then go back and watch previous lessons. Be sure to like, subscribe, and share. Don't forget that I do have lessons on here every single week, and I'd love to get you to come back and watch the lessons every single week. So without further ado, let's go ahead and jump into this lesson and see how we can do some additional tapping exercises with these extra notes. So in the last lesson, we looked at the pentatonic box on the A Aeolian scale, which was like this, where we're playing on the first and the second strings at the 5 and the 8. And we tapped on the 10th fret, and we did stuff like this. And stuff like this. And stuff like this. So all of that just used those 3 notes on each string, the 5, the 8, and the 10. Now we're going to look on the first string at the 5, the 7, the 8, and the 10, and we're going to look on the second string at the 5, the 6, the 8, and the 10. So we're going to be able to come up with some different shapes because we can use 3 notes with our left hand while we're still tapping in the same place with our right hand. So we can have things like this. Because this one uses more strings, there's a few more variations, so we'll just go through them, okay? So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to look at some different patterns that you can use with just the left hand. So first of all, we can just go ahead and play up and down the scale, right? And again, second string I'm playing 5, 6, 8. First string I'm playing 5, 7, 8. Helps you strengthen your left hand. If you're doing this with alternate picking, it can help you synchronize your hands very well. Then we can go ahead and use the pinky finger to anchor to each one of these shapes. So instead of going back and forth, we can just go ahead and grab each string with the pinky finger. Basically on the first string I'm going 8, 7, 5, and on the second string I'm going 8, 6, 5. You can also use your ring finger to tether you back to each string. So instead of going back and forth between the scale, when I get here and I want to switch strings, I can go ahead and hit on the first string on the 7th fret with my ring finger. And then when I get to the end of that one, I can go ahead and go with my middle finger to the second string Now I said my ring finger to tether you back, but what I meant was the middle fingers. So the two middle fingers here, because on the second string you're playing with your middle finger, and on the first string you're playing with your other middle finger, which is your ring finger, right? So these are in the middle. So you're going to tether yourself back. Like that. So on the first string we're playing 7, 8, 7, 5. And then on the second string we're going to play 6, 8, 6, 5. Little training exercise there, like we talked about in previous lessons, about how we're trying to trick our brain to do things that our fingers don't normally want to do. And by doing that, it's going to help us become a faster and more fluent player. So taking those three shapes, this one, this one, and this one. We can now start adding in the 10th fret with our right hand, and we can tap. So on that first one, where we're going all the way down the scale, now, there's a couple different ways you can do this. We can go all the way back down the scale, come up, tap, go back down, then come all the way back up. Tap there, go all the way back down. Like that. Or we could tap every time we hit with my pinky on the 8th fret. And then come up. I can tap there, or I can just keep on going up the scale. So I can tap there if I want to. That one string type thing, you can also practice that. Or I can go ahead and go up the scale. Like that. So get used to doing it with one string. Then walk up. And again, just going back and forth between the scale. Now there might be some variation there. You might go back, walk up, and then walk back down. And come up, and walk down, and come back up. If you're doing it like that, then of course you'll get a different variation. Something like that. And of course, depending on the song that you're working on, if you're just playing those tapping licks, you might want to stay on one string more, or you might want to move on to different strings. Sometimes repetition in a song creates a lot of tension, and it allows people to kind of gravitate back towards what they're listening to more than if you're constantly moving back and forth. Also, hills and valleys. Slow it down. Joe Satriani does a lot of stuff like that. All right, so I digress, but there's just all kinds of cool stuff in there that you can play with. The next one was where we went to the pinky, where I'm basically just playing the shape backwards. Right? And we're going to tap every time we hit the pinky on the 8th fret. We're going to tap on the 10th fret. And you notice I'm hitting that 8th fret. I'm basically accidentally hitting the first and the second string at the same time as I do that. That's one of the things you want to slow yourself down and really work on that. Notice my first finger is moving back and forth between the first and the second strings. So if I just leave it there and I anchor, it's going to create a lot of extra noise. Also, it's more difficult to play when I just tether myself there than if I move back and forth. But again, your mileage might vary. And then the last one was where I went with my middle fingers, my middle finger itself on the second string at the 6th fret, and my ring finger on the first string at the 7th fret, where I'm going to go ahead and go back and forth. So we're going to go ahead and play the tapping lick when I hit the pinky. See, pinky, tap. And you could also tap when I play the anchor finger, right? Either the middle finger on the second string at the 6th fret or the ring finger on the first string at the 7th fret. And there's all kinds of different variations. This is where you just play with it. Or you can tap every time I hit the anchor and the pinky. So again, there's all kinds of crazy variations in there. And that's just across 2 strings with, what, 8 notes? And you can go and mix up that kind of stuff with alternate picking, legato, hammer-ons and pull-offs. And as you're tapping in, notice I just kind of stayed right there within that first and that second string box, but just using hammer-ons, pull-offs, legato, all kinds of different kinds of phrasing, alternate picking, and then the tapping, you're able to come up with all kinds of crazy stuff. So that's just something you want to play with. But again, practicing those specific shapes where you're using your pinky as your anchor, your ring finger and your middle finger as your anchor, just going back and forth. I didn't even talk about just going up, right? Like that's one right there. And then where would you tap on that? Probably the anchor note, which would be my index finger. Something like that. That was a little tough, but just every time you hit the index finger here, you tap, pull off, and then go up the scale. Index finger, tap, pull off, go up the scale. Index finger, tap, pull off, and go up the scale. That was a little tough. Again, there's lots of different shapes in here that if you keep playing the same thing over and over again, the repetitive stuff that you're used to, you're never going to train your fingers to do something different. By doing stuff like that, by saying, okay, well, let's tap every time I hit the index finger. Let's tap every single time I hit the index finger. I'm going to tap, and I'm going to walk up the scale, index finger tap, index finger right there, tap. See, I want to hit that note right there. But if you can get that down pat, right? And, you know, it'll probably be something I'll experiment with in the future. If you can get that down pat, then what winds up happening is you can go ahead and play something, you know, really unique. And it's going to, again, especially to fellow guitar players out there, they're going to be like, what is he doing? What's going on? But it's also training your fingers to just move back and forth and do all kinds of really crazy stuff that you're not quite used to. Because, again, that tried and true stuff, you know, the same notes there, right? you know, all that stuff. It's great. There's nothing wrong with it. Again, it's tried and true. But if you want to kind of mix it up and change your playing up a little bit and do some cool stuff that you've never done before, maybe you've never seen before, then that's why you want to play around with different patterns with your fingers, like how your fingers move. When do you tap? Which finger do you land on the string and then you tap? Like, how do you do that? And just coming up with all kinds of different patterns and variations is going to help you become a better player, add more to your vocabulary, and of course, overall improve your playing. Hey, thanks again for watching my lessons every single week. If you're a fan of the channel and you've already liked, subscribed, and shared, I thank you so much. And if you got my free course, if you signed up at tinyurl.com/DanH411, then also let us know in the comments, you know, is it helping you? Have you been able to see the fretboard as a circle? Are you able to see how the scale shapes lock together like puzzle pieces? Is it helping you be able to play this thing more intuitively? And as I always say, just pick up the guitar and go. So if you don't know about that, if you don't know about the free course, go on over to tinyurl.com/DanH411 and get that free course. And what it will help you do, especially if you're watching the YouTube lessons, is understand the scale shapes a whole lot more, how they lock together, how they're circular in nature, and how you can just pick up the guitar and play intuitively and express yourself the way that you want to express. It doesn't mean there's not additional work you got to do. If there wasn't, I wouldn't be putting out a lesson every single week. But to understand the lessons that I put out every single week, it's probably a little bit better if you check out the free course, because my crazy brain understands this thing a little bit differently than a lot of your theorists and a lot of your purists understand it. So because of that, my teaching tends to be a little bit different, okay, a little bit crazy. And if you check out my free course, then it's going to help you understand the things that I'm talking about when I talk about certain patterns and scale shapes and stuff like that. Like, subscribe, and share. Let me know in the comments what you thought about this lesson. Check out the free course, and I'll see you in the next one.